Fei Yi, Dongyun, and Yang Yi. Prominent members of the state of Shu Han. Fei Yi and Dongyun were two of the four persons who held positions equivalent to the heads of government, along with Jiangyuan and Zhuge Liang. Yang Yi thought himself worthy of succeeding Zhuge as the head of state, but he failed to live up to his aspirations. His frequent arguments with Wei Yan may have hindered his chances here, as Fei Yi was once forced to resolve a conflict between them and to keep them under control at a time when Zhuge Liang was still alive. Fei Yi, courtesy name Wen Wei, was born on an unknown date in Jiangxia Commandery. Because his father passed away while he was still young, he was raised by an older relative whose aunt was the mother of Liu Zhang. Fei Yi went along with his relative as a travelling student when the latter was invited into Yi province. Dongyun's birthday is also unknown. His courtesy name is Ziyu Zhao, and his family originally hailed from Jiangsu, but they migrated to Nan Commandery. His father, Dong He, served under Liu Zhang, then switched allegiances to Liu Bei once he became the new governor of Yi province. During this time, Fei Yi, Dongyun, and another notable scholar called Zhu Shulong all became equally as famous as one another. Fei Yi and Dongyun wanted to attend the funeral of Zhu Jing's son, so Yun asked his father to arrange their transport. It was only a small chariot with no rear covering. As Fei Yi eagerly got on board, Dongyun seemed more reluctant to do so. When they arrived at the occasion, they saw Zhuge Liang and the other officials in well-decorated carriages. As they dismounted, Dongyun was embarrassed, whereas Fei Yi was calm and composed. Once the wake was over, Dong He asked the chariot driver how the pair reacted when they learnt that their carriage was of inferior design. Dong He then later told his son, "I'd always thought that you and Wen Wei were on par with each other. Now I have the answer to my question." Yang Yi, courtesy name Wei Gong, was born in Xiangyang Commandery, again at an unknown date. He initially served as a registrar under Fu Shun, the inspector of Jing province. He later defected over to Guan, who appointed him as an officer of merit and sent him to Chengdu. When he arrived, he shared a discussion on military strategy and politics with Liu Bei, who became very impressed with him. Liu was so pleased that he appointed Yang Yi as a senior clerk in his administration office. Then in 219, after Liu Bei took control over Hanzhong, Yang Yi was promoted to the Master of Writing. 3 years later, Fei Yi and Dongyun were appointed by Liu Bei to serve as the new heir apparent Liu Shan's close attendants. At the time when Liu Bei was away at the Battle of Yiling, Yang Yi offended the current prefect of Masters of Writing, Liu Ba. As a form of punishment, he had Yang Yi reassigned as the nominal administrator of Hongnong Commandery. Following Liu Bei's death in 223, Zhuge Liang began to serve as the Shu regent on the underage Liu Shan's behalf. After the coronation, Fei Yi and Dongyun were both soon appointed as gentlemen of the Yellow Gate. Under Liu Shan, Yang Yi carried out his duties as usual until the year 225, when Zhuge Liang transferred him to his imperial office. Here he served as an army advisor and accompanied Zhuge on his southern Nanman campaign. When they returned to Chengdu around the autumn of 225, Fei Yi led many of his colleagues out tens of miles to welcome Zhuge. Most of the gathered officials were around the same age and status as Fei Yi, but it was only him who was chosen by Zhuge to ride in the same carriage on the way back. The others felt very surprised, and they soon changed their opinions of Fei Yi after this. Fei Yi was then commissioned as a colonel of illustrious trust by Zhuge and sent to Wu to act as Shu's ambassador. During his time on these missions, Sun Quan treated Fei Yi to many alcoholic drinks, then bombarded him with questions about current affairs. Fei Yi kept his cool and gave the excuse that he was no longer sober, as they refused to answer immediately. He noted all the questions, went away and thought them through carefully, then returned with the answers without missing a question. Zhuge Ke and Yang Dao, who were known for their speaking and debating skills, challenged Fei Yi by posing him difficult questions. However, he was able to provide well-reasoned answers and held his ground throughout his mission. The senior Shu general, Wei Yan, was known to be boastful, but many of his colleagues were forgiving of this and generously gave in to him. Yang Yi was one of the few who made no concession to Wei Yan, so they deeply resented each other, and Wei Yan would often brandish his sword in front of him. On one occasion, their heated arguments led to Yang Yi sobbing with tears running down his cheeks, so Fei Yi had to step in and manage to keep them under control. Zhuge Liang was upset by their inability to work together, but was unable to side with either of them as he appreciated both men for their talents. In one instance, during the ambassador missions, a drunken Sun Quan asked Fei Yi about Yang Yi and Wei Yan. Yang Yi and Wei Yan behave like immature boys. Even though their contributions are insignificant, they can still cause big trouble because they're in positions of power. If one day Zhuge Liang is no longer around, there will definitely be a disaster. All of you are confused. No one has considered the long-term implications of this problem. Isn't that harmful to your descendants? Fei Yi was stumped and started to glance around as he tried to think of an answer. One of his deputies, Dong Hui, stepped up, looked at Fei Yi, and gave him a long-winded answer that essentially explains the bigger problem of defeating Wei is more crucial than solving internal issues. Pei Songzhi noticed a discrepancy in the recordings of this event, as two separate recordings by the same author describe it differently. One has Fei Yi think of the answer himself, whilst the other attributes it to Dong Hui. Songzhi also points out that Dong Hui should not be recorded as a junior official, as he was a commandery administrator and not a junior in any sense. Pei Songzhi also criticized the author for being careless in his writing because of such contradictions. At another time, Sun Quan gave the order, "When the Shou ambassador arrives, all of you just remain seated, continue eating, and don't stand up to greet him." When Fei saw them deliberately ignoring his presence, he said, "When a Feng Huang shows up, the Shilin will stop eating and acknowledge his presence. Donkeys and mules are ignorant, that's why they continue eating." Zhuge Ke replied, "We planted parasol trees for the Feng Huang's arrival. A brambling bird came along instead. Why don't we scare away the brambling and force it to go back to where it came from?" Fei Yi then stopped chewing on his pastry and asked for a brush to compose a poetic exposition of the debate. Zhuge Ke did the same, whereafter they exchanged their works and praised each other. Chuan became so impressed with Fei Yi that he told him, "Sir, you are one of the most virtuous men in the empire. You will definitely become an important pillar in the state of Shou. By then, I fear you will no longer be able to visit us often." Chuan presented a precious sword that he carried with him all the time to Fei Yi as a parting gift. He remarked, "I am untalented. What makes me deserve such an honor? A sword is meant to be used against enemies of the state, and to put an end to the chaos. I hope that you, great king, will do your best to rule your kingdom and work together with Shou to support the Han dynasty. I may be ignorant and weak, but I'll never disappoint the hopes you have placed in me." After returning from his diplomatic mission to Wu, Fei Yi was promoted to a palace attendant. Then when Shu's armies mobilized for the northern campaigns in 227, he was summoned from Chengdu to Hanzhong. Between 227 and 230, Fei Yi alternated between his roles as a military advisor and as ambassador. He assisted Zhuge Liang in his campaigns, but was often sent to Wu during this period of time. Yang Yi also accompanied Zhuge Liang north, whilst Dong Yun was left in Chengdu to watch over internal affairs. Zhuge was worried that Liu Shan was still too immature to make good judgments, and believed Dong Yun would carry out his duties in a professional and impartial manner. In Zhuge Liang's Chu Shi Biao, the memorial on the case to go to war that he presented to Liu Shan, he named Dong Yun, Fei Yi, and Guo Yuji as examples of loyal and competent officials who could provide good advice and assist in governing. In 230, Fei Yi's duty as ambassador was fulfilled, so he was reassigned to serve as the central protector of the army, then as a major within the Shu army. Not long after this, Dong Yun was appointed as a palace attendant and commissioned as the general of the household by Zhuge Liang, then given command over the imperial guards. As his new colleague was mild-tempered and non-confrontational, the burden of advising Liu Shan and speaking up on difficult matters rested largely on Dong Yun's shoulders. He performed his duties well and did his best to plan ahead and preempt problems that could arise. One time, Liu Shan wanted to expand his harem to allow for more than the traditional 12 women. Dong Yun pointed out to Liu Shan that his harem was already full, and also firmly refused his order to search for any more women. Unable to get what he wanted, Liu Shan resented and feared Dong Yun. At this time, Jiang Wan served as the prefect of the Masters of Writing and inspector of Yi. He wanted to step down and let Fei Yi and Dong Yun succeed him, so he wrote to Liu Shan. Dong Yun has served in the palace for many years and has done his best to support and uphold the dynasty. He should be awarded a peerage to honour him for his contributions. However, Dong Yun refused to accept this title. One time, Dong Yun was about to leave his residence for a casual hangout with his friends, Fei Yi, Hu Ji, and others. Dong Hui arrived to meet with him at the same time, but he said that he would come back another time as he saw Dong Yun already had arrangements. Yun stopped him and said, "I am just hanging out with my friends. I think you made a trip here to share some brilliant ideas with me. It would be rude of me to ignore you just so I can go see my friends." He then got off his carriage and cancelled his hangout, which earned him praise for his courteous and respectful attitude towards his colleagues and people of talent. The eunuch Wang Hao was shrewd and full of flattering words towards Liu Shan in his attempts to rise to higher positions of power. Dongyun kept Wang Hao in check when he learned of this and openly criticized Liu Shan for showing him favor. He also severely reprimanded the eunuch for his behavior, who then feared Dongyun and did not dare to cause any trouble. Whilst Dongyun was still alive, Wang Hao never rose above the position of an assistant of the Yellow Gate. In 234, when Zhuge Liang became critically ill at Wujiang Plains, he announced that Jiang Wan could succeed him and that Fei Yi could succeed Jiang Wan. Zhuge secretly instructed Yang Yi, Fei Yi, and Jiang Wei to lead the armies back to Shou after his death, with Wei Yan and Jiang Wei in charge of the rear guard. If Wei Yan refused to follow orders, they were to retreat without him. After Zhuge passed, Yang Yi ordered the news of his death to be kept secret and instructed Fei Yi to assess Wei Yan's intentions. He refused to submit to Yang Yi's command, so Fei Yi pretended to help him make arrangements so that he could continue fighting. He wrote a letter which outlined the arrangements and got them both to sign it. He then told Wei Yan he would go and read it out to the other officers in saying, "I will go back and explain your point of view to Chief Clerk Yang. The Chief Clerk is a civil official who knows little about military affairs. He will definitely not oppose the new arrangements." Fei Yi sped back to the main camp, and Wei Yan quickly came to regret his decision. He tried to stop him but couldn't catch up, so he sent a subordinate instead to find out the situation at the main camp. Wei Yan turned furious as he learned of Zhuge Liang's passing and the final orders, so he tried to block the Shu forces from retreating by destroying the gallery roads. Yang Yi and Wei Yan raced back to Chengdu and at the same time both accused each other of treason. The Shu government believed Yang Yi's account and suspected Wei Yan, which then led to his downfall at the hands of Ma Dai. Upon returning to Chengdu, Yang Yi thought that he had made great contributions and strongly believed that he would be chosen to succeed Zhuge Liang. He felt deeply disappointed when he found out that Jiang Wan was picked instead. Jiang Wan was appointed as the prefect of Masters of Writing, whilst Yang Yi became a central military advisor, a position with no real power. Yang Yi had always thought highly of himself and believed that he was superior to Jiang Wan as he had served in Shu for longer. After the latter was made the head of the government, Yang Yi frequently grumbled and complained to express his dissatisfaction. His colleagues ignored him due to his poor choice of words and conveying his frustration. Fei Yi was the only one who showed him any sympathy. Yang Yi once said to Fei Yi, "When the imperial chancellor died, I should have brought along my men and defected to Wei. If I knew I'd end up in this situation today, I deeply regret, but there's nothing I can do now." Fei Yi secretly reported this to the Shu government, which resulted in Yang being demoted to the status of a commoner and exiled to Hanjia Commandery. After this, he lashed out to the court using emotionally charged language and a written memorial to express his frustration. When he was found guilty of contempt and had an order for his arrest put out, he committed suicide. However, after his death, his family was allowed to return to Chengdu. Fei Yi went on to succeed Jiang Wan as the prefect of the Masters of Writing in May 235. During this period of war, he had numerous issues to attend to on a daily basis. Due to his high level of intellect, fast speed of processing information, and excellent memory, he could grasp all the key points of a document by skimming it once. On an average day, Fei Yi would complete his tasks in the morning and spend the rest of the day engaging in leisure activities. He was particularly skillful at playing Wei Shi, but despite his indulgences and fun, he never neglected his work or duties. When Jiang Wan relocated to Fu County in 243 due to poor health, he relinquished his titles of General-in-Chief and Manager of the Affairs of Writing to Fei Yi, thus making him the new de facto head of the Shu government. In the same year, Dongyun was given the additional appointment of the general who assists the state. Then the following year, he succeeded Fei Yi as the prefect of the Masters of Writing, whilst at the same time holding the position of a palace attendant. At this time, he also served as a deputy under Fei Yi. Dongyun tried to follow Fei Yi's daily schedule and lifestyle, but within 10 days he realized his work was gradually piling up. He sighed before saying, "The ability of a talented person can be so significantly different from that of another. I think I can never catch up with Fei Yi. Despite working all day long, I still have many things that I haven't attended to yet." In early 244, Tao Shuang led an army to Mount Xingxi to prepare for an attack on Hanzhong. Fei Yi was granted imperial authority to lead the Shu armies into battle against the invaders, but before he left, he was visited by Lei Min. They played a game of Wei Shi together, and all the while documents with feathers attached kept coming in. Fei Yi seemed deeply engrossed in the game, to which Lei Min told him, "I was actually testing you. You are a trustworthy person, and you'll definitely be able to defeat the enemy." By June, the Wei army was in a perilous situation and was lacking supplies. A delayed retreat by Tao Shuang allowed Fei Yi to organize a three-pronged attack which inflicted massive damage on the retreating enemy, where Tao Shuang barely escaped with his life. For his victory at Mount Shiji, Fei Yi was enfeoffed as a Marquis of Cheng District when he got back to Chengdu. Towards the end of that year, Xiangwan stepped down as Inspector of Yi Province and passed his responsibilities on to Fei Yi. Then following Xian's death in 246, Fei Yi became the new regent and head of Shu government. By now, his personal fame and contributions were on par with his predecessor. Dongyun also passed away in the year 246. At this time, the people of Shu named Dongyun, Zhuge Liang, Xiangwan, and Fei Yi as the four heroic chancellors of their state. Chenzi replaced Dongyun as a palace attendant, where he formed an alliance with Huang Hao to dominate the political scene in Shu. The pair would often speak ill of Dongyun to Liu Shan, and eventually Chen became one of the emperor's most favoured officials. Liu Shan gradually came to resent Dongyun, calling him arrogant and resentful. The pair shared power until Chenzi's passing in 258, which left Huang Hao solely in control. Dongyun's death marked the beginning of Huang Hao's rise to power and a trend in increasing corruption in the Shu government. The people of Shu longed to return to the times when Dongyun was in power. Chen Shu praises Dongyun as follows: "Dongyun rectified his lord when he was in the wrong, and righteousness was manifested in his countenance." Along with Dong He, Liu Ba, Ma Liang, and Chen Zhen, he was one of the best officials in Shu. In 248, Fei Yi relocated from Chengdu to Hanzhong. Throughout their regencies, Xiangwan and Fei Yi still maintained control over state affairs, even though they were far away at Hanzhong for extended periods. For example, Liu Shan had to consult them and gain their approval before giving out rewards and punishments to officials. Such was Liu Shan's high level of trust in and reliance on these two regents during his reign. In 251, he returned to Chengdu, but learned from fortune tellers that it was inauspicious for him to remain in the capital, so in winter he moved out of the city to Hanshao County. The next year, Liu Shan granted him permission to have personal staff to assist him in running the day-to-day affairs. Fei Yi would meet his downfall in the year 253 at the hands of a former Wei civilian who became a general in Shu. This was predicted by Zhang Ni, who noticed Fei Yi was too good-natured and trusting. Guo Ziyu, the defector from a rival state, once attempted to assassinate Liu Shan to please the Wei emperor, but he failed in his mission. He then switched his target to Fei Yi instead, and succeeded. A drunk Fei Yi was stabbed in the back whilst hosting a party on the first day of the Chinese New Year. He was posthumously honoured as respectful Marquis. Chen Shu praises Fei Yi as compassionate, generous, and charitable. Whereas Pei Songzhi noted, despite being in a position of power and prestige, Fei Yi remained humble and always showed respect towards others. He had no excess wealth for himself or his family. His sons lived like commoners, and they wore clothes of plain design, had simple meals, travelled on foot, and had no escorts to accompany them when they travelled. At some point during his career, Fei Yi highlighted multiple views regarding the incident at Gao Ping tombs. Firstly, in a rhetorical common view of the matter, then his own counter-argument of the event, along with his judgment of who is right and wrong, Sima Yi or Tao Shuang. Let's say that someone believes that Tao Shuang, along with his brothers, were of the mediocre and common sort, that their position, privilege, and benefit were only due to their relation to the imperial clan. Moreover, with time, they became excessive and arrogant, would usurp royal prerogatives, had close ties with vile persons, monopolized power by establishing those of their clique, and plotted against the interest of the state. Then Sima Yi took a risk to punish them, and in one strike they were exterminated. That this act is proof enough that Sima Yi was worthy of his appointment, and realized the desire of the scholars and commoners alike. However, someone else may believe that Sima Yi resented Tao Rui for not entrusting all of the state affairs to him solely, Therefore, Tao Shuang and his actions were irrelevant of Sima Yi's decision. Since the management of the state was already divided, time helping, it became even more flawed. From the start, Sima Yi did not give honest counsel and loyal admonishment. Rather, he used the opportunity to have all of them slaughtered at once when they were unprepared. In that case, how could it be considered as a great man acting in consideration of the state or doing his duty? If indeed Tao Shuang really wanted to act against his ruler and had a desire to rebel, then on the day Sima Yi acted, Tao Fang was left alone and vulnerable with Tao Shuang and his brothers. However, Sima Yi, with his sons Sima Shi from the rear, closed the city gates and raised troops, putting into danger Tao Fang and proclaiming there would be no peace talk. Can we consider a person acting as such as a loyal minister with the intention of saving his lord? If we follow this view, then the fact that Tao Shuang did not commit great fault should be obvious. Now if Sima Yi acted because Tao Shuang usurped power and was extravagant, then a fair punishment would have been to remove him from office. However, he exterminated all of his clan, and this was an injustice, ending Tao Zhen's bloodline. Even He Yan, along with his son, who were relatives to the Wei imperial line, were also executed. This was a usurpation of power, and Sima Yi's actions were excessive and improper. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.